Please don't give up. Someone very sad is coming here today. Those were the words Isabel Hart whispered to a dying white orchid on the 47th floor of the Collins Financial Tower. The misty morning rain tapped against the floor-to-ceiling windows of what everyone called the abandoned rooftop, a forgotten garden space that corporate had written off years ago. Most employees never ventured up here, especially not the shy girl from the cleaning crew who barely spoke above a whisper in the hallways below. But 8 months ago, when Isabel had applied for this job, she'd felt an inexplicable pull to explore every floor of the building. Something her mother had said before dying about finding the place where broken hearts heal had led her to climb these stairs day after day until she discovered this neglected sanctuary. In her weathered hands, she held her mother's leather journal, filled with cryptic notes about the secret language of plants. Her mother had written, "When you whisper to flowers with the words I taught you, they will tell you about the broken hearts around you." Isabel had always been different from other children, the shy girl who preferred talking to her mother's garden rather than playing with neighborhood kids. Her mother used to say she had a gift, a sensitivity that most people lost as they grew older. "You feel what others feel, darling," her mother would explain. "That's why you're drawn to things that need healing." As Isabel tenderly watered each wilting plant, something extraordinary happened. The flowers seemed to respond, not to her touch, but to emotions she couldn't see. The orchid's petals trembled. The sunflowers drooped lower. Her grandmother's old words echoed in her memory. "That shy girl of ours has magic fingers when it comes to growing things." And then she heard footsteps. Nathan Collins emerged from the emergency stairwell, his expensive suit wrinkled, his eyes red from another sleepless night. He froze when he saw this young woman in a cleaning uniform talking to flowers, exactly as Elena, his deceased wife, had described in her final letters. "How did you—" Nathan started to speak, then stopped, his voice catching. Isabel looked up, startled, her cheeks flushing the way they always did when caught off guard. "I'm sorry, sir. I was just—" "You were talking to them," Nathan whispered, stepping closer. "Like they could hear you." The shy girl who normally would have fled from such attention found herself rooted in place, unable to look away from the profound sadness in this stranger's eyes. For a moment that stretched between worlds, neither moved. The flowers swayed gently in the morning breeze, as if nodding in agreement with something only they could understand. Have you ever felt like nature was trying to tell you something? Keep listening. This story is just beginning to unfold. 3 days later, Victoria Green stormed up to the rooftop like a woman on a mission, her heels clicking aggressively against the concrete steps. "What exactly do you think you're doing up here?" Victoria's sharp voice cut through the peaceful morning air. As head of human resources, she prided herself on knowing every employee's exact duties, and Isabel's didn't include flower arrangement. Isabel's hands trembled slightly as she continued watering a struggling rose bush. In the corporate world below, she was known as the quiet one, that shy girl from cleaning services who never spoke up in employee meetings and ate lunch alone in the break room. I just noticed these plants needed care," Isabel replied softly, her voice barely audible above the morning breeze. "The maintenance supervisor mentioned this area was neglected, so I thought, this isn't your job. You're paid to clean offices, not play gardener." Victoria's eyes narrowed as she studied the transformation around her. Someone had clearly spent considerable time up here. "I'm writing you up for unauthorized access." That evening in her tiny studio apartment, Isabel spread her mother's journal across her kitchen table, searching for answers. She opened to the page that had led her to this job, a newspaper clipping her mother had saved, featuring Collins Financial Tower's construction 25 years ago. Her mother had circled one line: "The building's top floor will feature a community garden space for employee wellness." Below it, in her mother's handwriting, "This is where you'll find your purpose, darling. I met a woman at the hospital who worked there, Elena Collins. She told me about a rooftop that needed someone special to tend it. She said when the time was right, you would know." Isabel's breath caught. Elena Collins, Nathan's wife. Her mother had met Elena during her cancer treatments 2 years ago. They'd shared the same oncology ward, the same hope, the same eventual loss. She turned to the next page, where her mother had written, "Elena and I became friends during chemotherapy. She told me about her husband's building, about a garden space on the top floor that was abandoned. She said she'd been praying for someone who could hear what plants were really saying, someone who could bring healing to that space. I told her about your gift with flowers, sweet girl. Before Elena passed, she made me promise that when you were ready, you'd apply for a job at Collins Financial. She said the building needed your magic, even if they didn't know it yet." The final entry, dated just before her mother died. "Elena left something for you on that rooftop. She said you'd find it when the time was right. Don't let them convince you that being a shy girl means being powerless. Your gentleness is exactly what that broken man will need." Now everything made sense. Her mother hadn't just told her about this job randomly. It had been Elena's dying wish, a connection forged between two mothers facing death, each trying to ensure their children would find healing after they were gone. Nathan couldn't stop thinking about the woman with the gentle voice. Every morning for the next week, he found himself climbing those 47 flights of stairs instead of taking the elevator to his penthouse office. He would hide behind a rooftop door, watching Isabel move among the plants like she was choreographing a dance only she could hear. Her whispered conversations with the flowers seemed less crazy and more necessary. She was unlike anyone in his corporate world. No power suits, no aggressive ambition, just a shy girl who seemed to understand something profound about healing that all his therapy sessions had missed. Nathan had built walls around his heart since Elena's death, convinced that vulnerability was weakness. But watching Isabel tend to dying plants with such tender care made him remember what Elena used to say. "The strongest people aren't the ones who never break, Nathan. They're the ones who know how to nurture broken things back to life." Each morning brought small revelations. On Monday, he watched Isabel gently stake a falling sunflower, whispering encouragement as if it were a frightened child. On Tuesday, she spent 20 minutes carefully transplanting seedlings that others would have thrown away, her hands moving with the precision of a surgeon and the tenderness of a mother. Wednesday morning changed everything. Isabel knelt beside a cluster of dying sunflowers, the same type that had filled Elena's hospital room during her final weeks. The morning light caught the gold in her hair as she cupped their drooping heads with infinite gentleness. As she touched them, she whispered, "Don't let go. Someone still needs to feel warmth from your smile. I know you're tired, but there's someone who dreams about flowers like you. Someone who associates your bright faces with the most beautiful love he's ever known." Nathan's breath caught. How could she possibly know that he'd chosen sunflowers for Elena? Because she said they reminded her of their wedding day, golden and bright and full of promise. He stepped out from his hiding place, his heart hammering against his ribs. "How did you know what sunflowers meant to me?" Isabel spun around, her face flushing crimson the way it always did when caught off guard. I don't know anything. I just felt." "Felt what?" Nathan moved closer, his voice barely above a whisper. For the first time in months, he felt truly awake, truly present in his own life. "I felt like someone was missing these flowers terribly, like they were connected to a beautiful memory that someone couldn't bear to let go of." Her voice grew softer, more certain. Like they were symbols of a love that was so pure it made everything else in the world seem more beautiful too. The words hit Nathan like lightning. Elena had written in one of her last letters, "Someday, you'll meet someone who can hear my voice through flowers. She'll probably be quiet, maybe even seem ordinary to others, but she'll have a gift that will bring you back to life." At the time, he thought it was the morphine talking. Now, standing in this forgotten garden with this mysterious woman who seemed to channel Elena's very thoughts, he wondered if Elena had seen something he couldn't. "My wife used to say things like that," Nathan said quietly, his voice thick with emotion. "Before she died, she said flowers hold memories, carry messages between hearts. Isabel's eyes filled with understanding that seemed far too deep for someone so young. She loved sunflowers. It wasn't a question. Somehow, impossibly, this shy girl who barely knew him could feel the echoes of his wife's presence in a way that made his chest tight with wonder and grief. When destiny calls, it rarely announces itself clearly. Sometimes it whispers through the most unexpected messengers. Victoria had been watching from her corner office window for weeks now. She'd seen Nathan Collins, the untouchable CEO, talking intimately with a cleaning woman in the rooftop garden. Her corporate instincts screamed danger. What bothered Victoria most wasn't just the inappropriate fraternization. It was how that shy girl seemed to command Nathan's complete attention in a way that no board member, investor, or executive had managed since Elena's death. There was something unsettling about Isabel's quiet confidence, the way she moved through the world as if she knew secrets others didn't. Within hours of her latest observation, Victoria had called an emergency meeting with the board of directors. "Gentlemen, we have a situation," Victoria announced, spreading surveillance photographs across the conference table. "Our CEO is being manipulated by an employee who has clearly researched his personal life for personal gain." The evidence looked damning when presented strategically. Isabel's personnel file showed she'd only started working at the building 6 months ago, shortly after Elena's death became public knowledge. The sunflowers, Elena's favorite flower, were prominently featured in every garden photograph Victoria had taken. "She's obviously targeting him during his vulnerable period," Victoria continued, her voice taking on the tone she used for hostile takeovers. "This is textbook predatory behavior. A shy girl from nowhere, suddenly appearing with intimate knowledge of his deceased wife's preferences? It's too convenient to be coincidental." The board members shifted uncomfortably. Nathan had been functioning at minimal capacity since Elena's death, and they couldn't afford any scandals that might further destabilize his leadership. By noon, security had escorted Isabel from the building. She wasn't allowed to explain, wasn't permitted to defend herself. Nathan was away on a 3-day business conference and knew nothing about the board's swift decision. As Isabel packed her few belongings from the rooftop, her hands shaking with humiliation and confusion, something fluttered to the ground from behind a loose brick in the wall. It was a letter written in delicate handwriting that seemed to glow in the afternoon sunlight. "To whoever can hear the whispers of flowers, please help him find his smile again. He thinks love ends with death, but show him it only changes form. Elena." Isabel's hands trembled as she read the words over and over. She wasn't a gold digger or a manipulator. She was fulfilling the dying wish of a woman she'd never met, guided by forces she didn't understand but had learned to trust. That night, in her apartment that suddenly felt suffocatingly small, Isabel tore through her mother's garden with trembling hands, ripping up every flower her mother had planted with such hope. "Why?" she sobbed to the empty room, dirt under her fingernails and tears streaming down her face. "Why did I do everything right, but everyone thinks I'm wrong? Why does being a shy girl always mean people assume the worst about my intentions?" The destroyed garden lay scattered around her like broken dreams, and for the first time since her mother's death, Isabel wondered if she'd been foolish to believe in magic at all. Sometimes the truth takes time to surface, but it always does. Nathan returned from his business trip to find the rooftop garden eerily silent. No gentle humming, no whispered conversations with plants, just silence that felt like death itself. The sunflowers were already beginning to droop without Isabel's care. The orchid she'd been nursing back to health was wilting again. It was as if the plants themselves were mourning her absence. "Where is she?" Nathan asked everyone he encountered, but received only uncomfortable glances and mumbled excuses. His assistant avoided eye contact. The cleaning staff suddenly became very busy whenever he approached. Finally, Sam, the elderly security guard who had worked in the building for 30 years, couldn't bear the weight of the secret anymore. "Mr. Collins, that young woman was let go 3 days ago," Sam said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one could overhear. They said she was, well, they said she had inappropriate intentions toward you. Nathan's blood ran cold. That's impossible. She never. We barely even spoke. Sir, there's something else you should know, Sam continued, his weathered face heavy with guilt. I probably should have mentioned this sooner, but, well, your wife used to come up to that rooftop regularly during her final months. Not when she was too sick, mind you, but before that, when she could still get around. Sam paused, remembering. She told me she was preparing something special up there. Said she'd made a friend at the hospital, another woman going through treatment, and that this friend's daughter had a gift with plants. Mrs. Collins was convinced that this young woman would come to work here someday. Nathan felt the world tilt around him. Elena knew about Isabel before she even worked here. More than that, sir, Sam said quietly. Your wife left something hidden up there. She showed me the spot, said when the right person came along, they'd find it. She was very specific about it being meant for someone who could understand what plants were really saying. Nathan's heart hammered as the pieces fell into place. Elena hadn't just been hoping someone like Isabel would appear. She'd been actively planning for it, working with Isabel's mother to orchestrate a meeting that would happen after both women were gone. He rushed to the 47th floor, taking the stairs 3 at a time. On the gardening table, he found Isabel's mother's journal, left open to a specific page. But tucked inside was something that made his breath catch. Elena's letter, along with a photograph he'd never seen. The picture showed Elena and another woman, both wearing headscarves, both smiling despite their obvious illness. They were holding hands, their faces radiant with the kind of friendship that only forms between people facing the same impossible journey. My dearest Nathan, if you're reading this, it means you've met Margaret's daughter, the young woman I prayed would find her way to you. Margaret and I spent countless hours during our chemotherapy sessions talking about our children, about how to ensure they'd be cared for after we were gone. She told me about Isabel's gift with flowers, how she could somehow sense what plants needed, what people needed. I've been coming to this rooftop for months, imagining it as a garden where broken hearts could heal. Margaret and I planned this together. She promised that when Isabel was ready, she'd encourage her to apply for a job here. I prepared this space, planted seeds of hope in unexpected soil. Don't let her go, my love. She's not just someone who can tend a garden. She's someone who can tend your heart. Margaret and I may be leaving this world, but our love continues through the children we're entrusting to each other. Love doesn't end, Nathan. It just finds new ways to bloom. Nathan sank to his knees among the wilting plants, Elena's letter and the photograph clutched to his chest. This wasn't coincidence or destiny. It was love manifested across the boundary between life and death, two mothers ensuring their children would find healing in each other long after their own voices had been silenced. Nathan drove through the rain to Isabel's address, his heart racing with every mile. The windshield wipers beat a rhythm that matched his pulse as he rehearsed what he would say. How do you explain to someone that they've been chosen by destiny? How do you apologize for a world that can't recognize magic when it's standing right in front of them? He found her on the fire escape of her modest apartment building, sitting beside pots of dead flowers that looked like casualties of war. She wore an old sweater that had seen better days, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail, looking nothing like the corporate predator Victoria had painted her to be. Isabel, he called from a street below, rain soaking through his expensive suit. She appeared at the railing, her eyes swollen from days of crying. Even from this distance, he could see the defeat in her posture, the way her shoulders curved inward as if trying to protect her heart from further damage. You shouldn't be here, she called down, her voice hoarse. I was fired for a reason. Your board made it very clear that someone like me doesn't belong in your world. I know about Elena's letter, Nathan shouted over the increasing rain. I know what you were really doing up there. He held up the handwritten note, and Isabel's face crumpled with a mixture of relief and fresh pain. She slowly descended the metal steps, each footfall echoing like a heartbeat in the narrow alley. I brought you something, Nathan said, producing a bouquet of fresh sunflowers that he'd protected from the rain under his jacket. Elena wrote that you were the person she prayed would come into my life. Isabel's hands trembled as she accepted the flowers, their bright faces a stark contrast to the gray afternoon. I don't understand any of this. I just followed what my mother taught me, what felt right in my heart. And maybe your mother was guided by Elena, Nathan said gently, stepping closer until they were sharing the small shelter of the fire escape landing. Maybe this was always meant to happen. Maybe love really does find a way to keep caring for the people it cherishes. Nathan reached into his coat pocket and pulled out her mother's journal. I brought this back to you, but I have a question first. Will you come back? Not just to the garden, but to this, to whatever this is between us. Isabel looked down at the sunflowers, then back at his face, really looked at him for the first time. She saw past the expensive clothes and powerful position to the man underneath who was asking her to believe in something that defied logic. I haven't been alive since Elena died, Nathan continued, his voice breaking. I've been existing, going through motions, building walls around my heart. But watching you whisper life back into those flowers, you whispered life back into me too. The rain softened to a gentle mist, and for the first time in days, Isabel smiled. The flowers missed you, she said quietly. They've been drooping ever since you stopped visiting. They could feel your sadness from 47 floors away. Then let's go home, Nathan replied, offering her his hand. Let's go back to the garden. Let's see what grows when we plant hope in impossible soil. Sometimes coming home means finding a place you've never been before, but somehow always belonged. The emergency board meeting was unlike any in Collins Financial's history. Nathan stood before the directors with a passion they'd never seen from their grief-stricken CEO, his usual corporate composure replaced by something raw and authentic. For the past year, I've run this company like a machine, Nathan began, his voice steady but filled with emotion that made the room feel electric. I thought that's what strength looked like, shutting down, pushing through, pretending my heart hadn't been torn in half when Elena died. He gestured toward the presentation screen behind him, showing before and after photos of the rooftop garden. Dead space transformed into a sanctuary of life and color. But I've learned something important about healing from someone you all decided wasn't worthy of our company. It doesn't come from forgetting or moving on. It comes from allowing your heart to keep growing, keep loving, keep finding new ways to honor what you've lost while embracing what's still possible. The boardroom was silent except for the gentle hum of air conditioning. Victoria sat rigid in her chair, her face pale as she realized the magnitude of her mistake. I'm announcing the creation of the Whisper Garden Foundation, Nathan continued, his voice growing stronger with each word. We're going to transform corporate wellness by integrating healing spaces into workplaces across the city. Not because it's profitable, though I believe it will be, but because it's necessary. We've forgotten that our employees are human beings with broken hearts and wounded spirits who need more than efficiency metrics to thrive. He clicked to the next slide, showing Isabel's gentle hands tending to a wilted plant that had since bloomed magnificently. And the woman who inspired this vision, Isabel Hart, whom you fired for supposedly having ulterior motives, will lead this initiative as our director of nature therapy. Her salary will be 4 times what we paid her to clean our offices, because I've learned that the people who heal broken things are worth infinitely more than the people who simply maintain what's already working. Victoria finally found her voice. Nathan, with all due respect, we can't just... With all due respect, Victoria, Nathan interrupted, his tone firm but not unkind. My wife spent her final months searching for someone who could continue loving me when she couldn't. She found that person working quietly in our building, caring for abandoned things that everyone else had written off as worthless. If you can't see the profound wisdom in that, then you don't understand what this company should really be about. The vote was unanimous. Not because they all believe in garden therapy, but because they'd never seen Nathan so alive, so purposeful, so utterly certain of anything since Elena's death. 3 months later, the 47th floor had been completely transformed into the Whisperer Garden, a sanctuary where employees could find peace among plants that Isabel tended with the same gentle care she'd always shown, but now with the resources and respect she deserved. 1 year later, the Whisper Garden had become legendary throughout the city. Companies competed to hire Isabel's consulting services, and her workshops on nature therapy for corporate wellness had waiting lists that stretched for months. Business magazines featured her on their covers, calling her the flower whisperer who revolutionized corporate culture. But the most beautiful transformation happened quietly, in small moments that no photographer could capture. Victoria, who had once tried to destroy Isabel's career out of fear and misunderstanding, now attended every weekly workshop without fail. She approached Isabel one golden autumn afternoon, her usual sharp business attire replaced by comfortable clothes suitable for gardening. "I owe you more than an apology," Victoria said softly, her voice thick with emotion she'd kept buried for decades. "I was so afraid of change, so afraid of losing control, that I couldn't see the gift you were offering. I spent my whole career protecting this company from threats, but I couldn't recognize healing when it was standing right in front of me." Victoria paused, her hands trembling slightly. "I've been thinking about what you said, about hurt people hurting people. I realized I've been carrying pain for so long that I forgot what it felt like to hope for something beautiful." Isabel handed her a small potted lily, its white petals pristine and hopeful. "Pain makes us protective," she replied with the characteristic grace that had won over even her harshest critics. "This lily will teach you about forgiveness, starting with forgiving yourself for being human." Victoria accepted the plant with trembling hands, marveling at how something so simple could feel so profound. "How do you do it?" she whispered. "How do you see the good in everyone, even people like me who try to hurt you?" "My mother used to say that hurt people," Isabel replied, kneeling to tend a nearby rose bush. "But healing people help heal people." "You weren't trying to hurt me, Victoria. You were trying to protect something you cared about. That's not evil. That's just misguided love." That evening, as the sun painted the city in shades of gold and amber, Nathan found Isabel on the rooftop terrace that had once been their secret sanctuary. Now it was the crown jewel of the building, but they still had their private moments there when the workshops ended. Surrounded by thriving plants that swayed gently in the evening breeze, they stood together looking out over the city lights. On the wrought iron table beside them sat 2 framed photographs. One of Elena with her radiant smile, one of Isabel's mother in her garden, both women looking as if they were sharing a secret across time and space. "Do you think they knew this would happen?" Isabel asked, leaning into Nathan's warmth. "Do you think they somehow planned every detail, even Victoria's change of heart?" Nathan took her hand, noting how perfectly it fit in his, how her calloused fingertips told the story of her gentle strength. "I think love never really dies," he said, his voice filled with wonder. "It just finds new ways to take care of the people it cherishes. Maybe Elena guided your mother, or maybe your mother guided Elena. Maybe it doesn't matter how it happened, only that it did, and that it's still happening now." As if in response to his words, the sunflowers turned slightly toward them, their faces glowing in the moonlight like golden beacons of hope. A gentle breeze carried the scent of jasmine and roses, wrapping around them like a blessing from the women who had made this moment possible. From the workshop space below, a child's voice drifted up through the evening air. "Miss Isabel, do flowers really hear us when we talk to them?" Isabel smiled, the same gentle smile that had changed everything 12 months ago. "Try speaking to them with your whole heart," she called back, her voice carrying love and certainty. "And then listen for their answer." In the gentle evening breeze, surrounded by the garden they'd built together and the love that had grown from impossible soil, Nathan and Isabel understood that some stories don't end with happily ever after. They end with forever and always, whispered through flowers that dance in the wind, carrying messages between worlds, proving that love truly is the only force strong enough to bloom in any season. In a world that often values efficiency over empathy, sometimes we need reminders that the smallest acts of kindness can create the most profound changes. Have you ever experienced an unexpected connection that changed your life? If this story touched your heart, you're not alone. Share this story with someone who needs to believe in the magic of compassion. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that celebrate the extraordinary power of ordinary love. Because sometimes the most beautiful gardens grow in the most unlikely places, including the human heart.